have you guys been following this controversy at all with Mundfish? And first of all, so Colin was right thing, although, we kid around about that. I told you guys on this show that the second that the people realize that this is a Russian game, which I don't think a lot of people are realizing, or a lot of people that cover the industry just don't know anything about it. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know how many times that has to be repeated over and over again. But I told you when they figured out that this was a Russian game, there was going to be a problem. And lo and behold, people have figured out that this is a Russian developed game, although they make the claim that they are working with a global team. I'm not entirely sure how that works because they are supposed to be embargoed from economically dealing with a lot of different countries. But nonetheless, I'm wondering if this plays in at all. Dustin, do you feel like Mundfish being a Russian developer and therefore Atomic Heart being a Russian game, does that matter to you? And does that matter overall?
Based on what I've seen right now, I feel like it really doesn't matter. I think they've tried to get ahead of this through tweets like this, but the reality is no matter what they say, it will never be good enough for the people that have made up their mind that them being Russian, it makes this a no-go, which, whatever, stick to your convictions if you feel that way. I don't know if is there enough mind share in the industry for people to be hating on Hogwarts Legacy and this game in the same month at the same time. I don't know. We might just simply implode, but I don't know. I saw some weird stuff and I'm hesitant to bring this up in too much detail because it's crazy Twitter shit, but people that were looking in deep into different developers of this game and trying to find things that they've said, whether or not they're pro-war or whatever. And I don't know. It's too tiring. And I guess this is probably where I want to throw it to Chris, because Chris was streaming yesterday, and a lot of this stuff I think also applies to both this situation and the Hogwarts Legacy situation, where it's like, how moralistic are we going to be with everything in our lives? Everything. We can't. Yeah. And sure, there are things that for some people are going to, like I said, be no-goes, and stick to your convictions. That's fine. But if we're going to get this nitpicky, then you might want to look in the mirror and really think about all the things you're consuming, because you're going to have a truly bad time. If no ethical
consumption under capitalism. Isn't that the old saying?
You could make kind of an analogous argument about like Tencent and how we're kind of uncomfortable giving Tencent our money. Except I can't speak for everybody on the show, but like for me, the issue with Tencent isn't that they have Chinese studios making games from China. The issue is that they are pumping money into our developers, and they are kind of usurping our development teams and kind of taking over our development talent and our IP. Like, that's the weird thing about it. It's not like I have no issue buying a Chinese developed game from a Chinese studio. Like, I think what was that? There was
Wulong?
Wulong, and then there was that other one that looks like it was based on kind of Odyssey to the West. I think those look really cool, and I'm really interested in checking those out because those are Chinese games developed by Chinese studios. There's nothing wrong with that. In the same way, I don't feel like there's anything wrong with playing Atomic Heart just because the money that they make might go to the Russian government, and the Russian government does all sorts of shit that I don't agree with. The Chinese government does shit that I don't agree with. The US government does a ton of shit that I don't agree with. And I cannot live in this sphere where I'm constantly thinking about all these things, because there would be nothing left to play. We wouldn't be doing a PlayStation podcast because PlayStations are sourced by slave labor at Foxconn. I'm curious about how games media specifically is going to cover this. Because to me, drawing a line in the sand at Hogwarts Legacy, but then when Metal Slug Tactics comes out, they're probably going to cover it. That to me is insane.
They want Mundfish, the developers of Mundfish, to take a stance against the war in Ukraine, which is explicitly illegal in Russia.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what they want these people to do, but nonetheless,
it's a very Western lens, I will say.
Right.
It's like why it'd be really easy to do that in America, and it's like, yeah.
I was thinking when I was in college, there was and I don't know if you guys remember, you would have been in middle school maybe or something, there was massive anti-war demonstrations all over the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Millions of people, right, came out in the streets. I want to say 2005, something like that, 2006.
Yeah, I remember this.
And I was in college. I didn't go. I actually supported the war at the time because I was a fucking idiot. And I didn't go. But what I remember explicitly about that was how it didn't matter. I mean, that's what I remembered the most about it was literally millions of people got in the streets and were like, we don't want anything to do with these Middle Eastern wars anymore. And they were right. And the government, we're a free society. That kind of shit would get you disappeared in most of the world. But nothing happened. It's almost like the exact opposite. Talk is cheap, right? We can say it's beautiful. It's the beauty of freedom is we can say whatever we want. And I always say whatever I want. But it didn't even matter when we did. And look at the fucking crime we perpetrated. Not that it's like Ukraine. These are different wars. But in its own way, very violent, deadly, disgusting, cost tons of lives, tons of treasure, tons of whatever. These guys are in a situation where it's literally illegal. What do you want them to do? Like, what do you want them to do? That's my big question is, can someone tell me what they want Mundfish to do?
Yeah.
I haven't really seen any of that.
It's
I do know that they are, I don't know this actually, but I've just read that they do have connections, both obvious and tenuous, to sanctioned Russian oligarchs and businesses. But I would imagine everyone does in Russia. Like every business, all of the Russian national banks are sanctioned. So of course, you can be a fucking babushka living in Moscow and you're connected to a sanctioned Russian bank. I'm not saying what's going on. Russia's clearly the perpetrator and doing something really wrong, in my opinion. I don't also pretend to have all of the regional and historical knowledge, which I don't think really anyone talking about this does. But at least I don't pretend that I do. There's certainly more to this situation than meets the eye. I just don't pretend to understand it because I'm not an expert on Ukraine. But I will say that, isn't it kind of cool that they're just trying to operate and give us something and they're not really able to say anything, but isn't their dealing with us kind of showing us that they're friendly with us, reaching out a hand? Why are people so wrapped up in what others tell them they should think and feel? It's just so, Ukraine was so, that's the biggest example of it to me. I don't know what the fuck we're supposed to be doing over there as Americans. And I'm bummed out that we're sending so many weapons over there and just prolonging the war. And everyone's, so many people are getting killed and we have so much blood on our hands. We didn't have to get involved in this at all. These guys don't really have that option. They are involved. To what extent they can say anything, I just feel like I'm a little bit sympathetic towards it. And we have to ask bigger questions. Like, I wouldn't so much be looking at Mundfish. If you want to follow the money in an effective way, there are two entities that I think you should be talking about in regards to this game. Focus Entertainment, the publisher, and Microsoft, which is putting this game on Game Pass and therefore paid, no doubt, millions of dollars up front to this entity. But I don't understand what else people really expect out of this situation. I'm going to play the fuck out of this game. I'm really excited about it. And one thing that I think is really shitty, and I wanted to call this out, this actually came from the website The Gamer. And they say in part that the game is focused on making Russians look good, or the KGB looking good. It says, quote, "The devs are primarily being asked to comment on a war due to the nature of Atomic Heart, a game that seems to show the Russian military and KGB in a neutral or even favorable light," end quote. And that goes on to say, with the real life Russian military clearly wanting to foster patriotism in the country, many feel that Mundfish should condemn its actions, so Atomic Heart is not complicit in contributing to this nationalism. What are you talking about? First of all, I'm not going to play Atomic Heart and think anything about the Russian military or Russian nationalism because it's a fucking video game. And again, stop trying to pincer every situation, every entity, every game, every company, every product, blah, 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 through the same forced lens. Why do you care so much? If you want to hurt them, don't buy the game. Ignore it.
And
completely.
Unsubscribe to Game Pass. Do it.
Yeah. Shit, man. If you're in Game Pass, your money's going to these motherfuckers. I'll tell you that much right now. Too late. Already did. Too late.